Cead é sé Elizabeth Johnson Nishia oltá nisle adanna ina sinnigí é ceanna nisle dat sanna duna be tí tuairtíní de sé do tuairtíní de sinile a chut ego é den nás zanlé tá denna se. Hi, my name is Elizabeth. I'm from Farmington, New Mexico. I am a graduate student at Arizona State University in the Science of Healthcare Delivery program. What are your current and future career goals? Ever since I was 9 years old, my dream is to become a forensic scientist. And in high school, it evolved to becoming a medical examiner. And towards the end of high school, I realized that the Navajo Nation does not have its own medical examiner. And that is a true statement for a lot of Indigenous communities. So, what is my overall career goal? It has gone through different stages, and I do believe a lot of who I am as a person has developed through these stages. And I want to create a nationalized board of Indigenous medical examiners because I believe that Indigenous representation in STEM fields, in education, criminal justice, politics, history are vital parts in preserving history and preserving culture and practices. I am a strong advocate for strengthening sovereignty and resiliency, and I can go on and on about these topics, but what I want to do right now with the resources that I want to find a lab position in a local police department here in Maricopa or in Phoenix so that I can utilize my skills as a forensic science graduate and promote being a forensic scientist. My thesis from Barrett, the Honors College in May, was about establishing a relationship between the Diné philosophy and forensic science. And I think marrying these two and promoting it to younger generations will be vital in continuing the Indigenous representation. Currently, I'm a SSO assistant at the American Indian Student Support Services office, and I work on continuing with the Indigenous representation. I planned a two-part series with the University of Arizona about their pre-medical admissions pathway and pathway scholars program. And these two are actually targeted towards American Indian students to go into a medical field and their transitions. It's a graduate program. And I believe that promoting these programs to Indigenous students not only reassures them of the path that they want to go down, but also promotes them and advances them to something that at one point was close to us. How have you been involved in your community? Community to me has always been a family-oriented mentality. A few things that my family instilled in me was something I never thought I would miss until I didn't have it. My freshman year at ASU, I faced a culture shock. I come from a Navajo-dominated community, and I came from a Navajo high school. I went to Navajo prep. So I was surrounded with my Indigenous teachings, practices, languages, people who looked like me. And moving to a campus where Indigenous people were the minority was the scariest thing I've ever had to face. The biggest difference, I think, of me and them and a lot of other students, Indigenous and non-Indigenous, on the ASU campus was my secondary education afforded me a history that wasn't offered to other people. And I think that was the weirdest thing. I was taught Diné history. I was taught Diné, and to know that other people were not provided that information was something that was astonishing to me. I realized at Arizona State University, I became what felt like a luxury item for people. I was asked, where do I really come from? What is my Indian name? How much Indian am I? And I only thought those were questions people asked in movies or you heard on a James and Ernie comedy skit. I didn't think these were actually real questions that people had. And I found in AISSS, I was able to voice my concerns about being that Native girl. And from that title, I created Indigenous, and I switched that nickname that I was given to something that was empowering. When I graduated from ASU this past May, I began my master's program in August. I realized that community that I created with Indigenous and AISS had to expand. So I've been continuing my community-driven mentality through mentorships with undergrads, graduate students, and my YouTube channel. My position at AISS has allowed me to work with students on financial aid literacy with Google Drives, workshops, and events that I myself am planning. And my passion for helping Indigenous students pay for their college education has developed in relationships with the American Indian Graduate Center, Dr. Corey Still, who I met on the Native America Calling podcast that I served as a guest speaker about financial aid. And as a first-generation student who had to learn how to navigate financial aid, I want to help as many students learn that process, which hence my YouTube channel. And I think that's the best way I can get to as many Indigenous students as possible. What civic, church, or school college organizations have you or are you an active member of? How have you been an active member? Well, I mentioned about community. That is a very important and vital thing I think Indigenous college students need to have. I am a mentor to create that foundation of community for undergrads with Mentor U, with graduate students in the Shade Circles Indigenous Peer Mentoring. I'm also an academic coach for the American Indian Graduate Center. Another way I get involved with community is I want to volunteer. That's one of the biggest things that I think I didn't practice enough of. I joined Bridge the Gap and we volunteered with St. Mary's Food Bank. I am a member of the United Nations Association at ASU. I'm working with the youth observer, Dustin Liu, on finding careers in social impact, and I want to focus on Indigenous resiliency and sovereignty in STEM fields. I want to look into healthcare inequity, looking at the COVID response and its impact on Indigenous communities, but is not just my tribe. I am also a member of Indigenous, which is the student organization that I formed my sophomore year of undergrad to create that sense of community. I am not a leader in the Indigenous student organization, but I am a member, and I do think that has strengthened my leadership traits as a member and has also taught me a lot about what I was lacking as a leader in the student organization. I'm actually planning on becoming their event coordinator in spring, with everything being virtual and with my experience on virtual event planning with AISS. I do think that would be a vital asset for Indigenous. I do volunteer with them with Native Health at their community garden. We are planning on doing the Unite for Literacy. I provide insight for book club whenever we meet, which is bi-weekly. What leadership roles or positions have you held in these organizations? Well, like I mentioned, community is one of the most important activities of mine. And being a mentor for undergrads, graduate students, and prospective grad students not only helps me in my path towards promoting resiliency and Indigenous professionalism, but also helps me connect with other Indigenous communities outside of my tribe. I said earlier that I'm part of the Dene people, but I don't want my scope to just be on them because I want to understand the Red Power movement. If you look at the books behind me, I'm looking into Mexican Indigenous communities. I'm looking at the Indigenous communities in Canada. I'm looking the First Nations, sorry. I'm looking at Aboriginals, the history behind each community, so that I can get an understanding, because this is a huge picture that I'm only seeing a small part of. These mentoring opportunities that I have will help me increase that and also open the minds of other Indigenous people. I will continue to talk about Indigenous, and that is because the purpose and intentions of the organization are what I value the most. And I extended myself to be their event coordinator, a first ever position for Indigenous, where I will focus on virtual events. And that's because the pandemic has changed the way events are being planned, and the question as if the process is easier or not is what I plan to tackle. With my experience with AISSS and the team that Indigenous already has, I think that it would be benefit for members, incoming members, prospective members, and the officers already there. What awards or honors have you received? Well, I did say that I graduated from ASU. I got cum laude recognition. I graduated from the Barrett Honors College with a thesis about establishing a relationship between Diné philosophy and forensic science curriculum. That was targeted mainly towards Navajo middle school students to help them understand that science behind it. I looked into state regulations for Arizona. I also finished spring 2020 and fall 2020 with Dean's List recognition. I recently became an alumni member with the Delta Delta Epsilon Upsilon Chapter, which is a National Honor Society for the Forensic Science. Are there any extraordinary situations you wish the Native American Alumni Chapter to consider? I don't know how to answer this question without telling you a story. I grew up in a single parent home as an only child, so it's always been just my mom and I. And as an incoming freshman, that was something my mom and I were very scared about because we would be so far away. I'm from Farmington, New Mexico, and moving down here to Glendale, Arizona, it's a 6-hour drive. My mom couldn't just come right down whenever because she has work, I have school, so it just made everything a lot more difficult. The COVID pandemic prohibited me from going home because I wanted to make sure that my younger brother is okay. My mom had him when I came to college. Being out here on my own, I have a fiance and my in-laws, but it's different. And I think that's the biggest, the most extraordinary situation I have is actually being out here alone. I took summer classes and I got started on my master's program in the summer just so that I could get my mind off of not being able to go home. I finished my first session, which is session A, with 2 A's and 1 B. I'm beginning a capstone now that focuses on health policy and public transportation from the Office of Mayor Gallego. I am getting certified in social media, digital content, and inbound marketing, which are things that interest me for my YouTube channel, and promoting events I'm hosting and engaging on a platform that I don't really use. I want to use these certificates for the AISSS to promote their events, but also for myself to help in advocacy and understanding everything that has shifted because of the pandemic. I'm also getting certified in health and wellness from ASU and Mayo Clinic. That's because college burnout is the worst thing I have ever had to experience. And I can tell you right now, anyone who's listening, it's difficult to get out of that. I hope to use what I learned to promote holistic well-being. I took yoga my last year of college. It's the best class I've taken outside my major. And that was because I was able to practice on self-care. I was able to not worry just about my forensic toxicology or analytical chemistry. I was able to just sit and focus on myself. A lot of other people would benefit from that same class and practice, which is what I want to promote. I'm also getting certified in Law and Epidemic Emergency Preparedness, which is a free training program by the CDC, and I will link it down below, because I want to learn more about health inequity and the impact of the COVID-19 response. I want to learn about the legal side of emergency preparedness and the response systems and authorization and legal barriers that hinder such a large-scale community and how that impacted our response. Because me wanting to go into the medical field as a medical examiner, that is something that I have to worry about. That's something that I have to understand, because how will I communicate on a large scale about epidemics or pandemics, or how do I respond to certain things? And I think that training program will help me and benefit me in the long run. How would the scholarship help you meet your academic and career goals? I would like to revisit my goals. I want to go to medical school. I want to be a medical examiner. I want to create a nationalized board of Indigenous medical examiners. I want to promote Indigenous women, Indigenous men, Indigenous people to go into fields that at one point were not offered to us, who are still not offered to us. Growing up, when I told people what I wanted to be, they would try to navigate me away from it and tell me, oh, you should just be a teacher, or I don't know, college is really expensive, I don't think you'll be able to go there. And that should not be a mentality that's given to Indigenous students. That should not be a mentality that's given to Indigenous youth. And how this scholarship will help me in achieving those goals is I can continue my education as an Indigenous first generation woman in STEM graduate student. Just having those identities on its own are difficult to handle. And I want to help other students achieve those. I am very passionate, as I said, about representation. My position at AISSS has allowed me to work part-time with a full schedule for classes to help other students. Due to the pandemic and my current financial situation, this scholarship will help me worry only about school and my bills as separate entities. This scholarship, like every scholarship that I tell students, is a sponsorship. It's people believing in me with the ideas that I have, the dreams, my aspirations, my goals. I do think that my goals are not just mine. They're not just targeted towards my betterment. My goals are to improve my tribal communities in the United States and across the world. And this scholarship can help me achieve them by letting me continue my education. Thank you for listening. I have more videos somewhere if you're just watching on my YouTube channel. If you have any other questions that you want me to answer in a different video, just leave them down below. Bye.